What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the main event of UFC Vegas 91, Matheus Nicolau versus Alex Perez. Looking at this flyweight main event, both of these guys are coming off of losses. Alex Perez losing a decision to Muhammad Mokaev, and Matheus Nicolau getting KO'd by Brandon Royval. But before that, Matheus Nicolau had put a good win streak together. The last 4 wins he had before getting KO'd included Matt Schnell, David Dvorak, Tim Elliott, and Manel Kape. So he has some good wins recently for sure. Alex Perez, on the other hand, he is on a 3-fight skid now, losing to Pantoja, Figueiredo, and Muhammad Mokaev. His 2 victories before that included Espinosa and Formiga, so not really a super high level of competition. He isn't taking a step down in competition here, facing Matheus Nicolau after fighting Muhammad Mokaev, but I don't really rate Muhammad Mokaev that highly, and I do think that Matheus Nicolau is going to give Alex Perez some problems, but you do have to worry about Matheus Nicolau having some time out of the octagon now and suffering a KO loss in his last fight. In terms of betting odds on this fight, Matheus Nicolau sits at around -185, Alex Perez as an underdog +155, somewhere in that range depending on where you're placing your wagers. But I'm going to have to go with the favorite here. I think Matheus Nicolau is going to win this, and I think he's going to win it by a pretty comfortable decision. I think that Matheus Nicolau by decision at +220 is a very, very good play here in this main event. He doesn't have a ton of finishing potential, but neither does Alex Perez. I think either way this fight goes, it's going to a decision. But after rewatching each of their last 6 fights in depth, I have to pick Matheus Nicolau here. I think he's going to get the job done, and I'll tell you why. Alex Perez's best attributes as a fighter are going to be his leg kicks, his wrestling, and if you want to give it to him, his boxing combinations, but he is a little bit sloppy and leaves himself open to be countered when he does it. He does tend to overextend there. And if you look at the strengths of Matheus Nicolau's game, you're going to see a lot of lateral movement, really good footwork, a nice jab. He has good counter shots, good left hooks and overhand rights when people try to close the distance on him when he's using his lateral movement. Has some good leg kicks as well, and his grappling base is pretty strong. So I don't think that Alex Perez is going to be able to utilize his wrestling a lot because of the movement of Matheus Nicolau. I don't think he's going to be able to close the distance to be able to snatch up a leg or get his hands locked around Matheus Nicolau. We saw Matheus Nicolau defending takedowns really well against crafty old Tim Elliott. So I think he'll be able to do the same in this matchup here against Alex Perez. His movement is just going to be too much for him. I think he's going to out-volume him, just landing a lot of jabs and low kicks. Of course, Alex Perez will try to hinder the movement of Matheus Nicolau using his leg kicks, but Matheus Nicolau is a lot better than Formiga, who Alex Perez stopped via leg kick TKO. He's not going to get a leg kick TKO here over Matheus Nicolau. He's going to be hip to it. I'm sure that Matheus Nicolau, as a smart fighter, is going to look at that and mitigate those risks and check the leg kicks when he needs to. And also, when he's moving side to side so much, it's going to be harder to time that leg kick on Matheus Nicolau. He'll switch stances as well, so I just really don't see Alex Perez's leg kick being that big of a factor in this fight, and I don't think he's going to be able to close the distance with the boxing to be able to shoot takedowns or anything like that on Matheus Nicolau. I think Matheus Nicolau is just going to leg kick, jab, and his lateral movement is really good. He tends to frustrate his opponents, and once his opponents get frustrated, they'll overextend. He'll angle off, take the center of the octagon, and when he takes the center of the octagon, he'll throw his counter shots. He'll throw a good left hook. He'll throw a nice overhand right. He really lets his boxing combinations go a lot more in the middle once he circles off his opponent after they chase him down, trying to close the distance when he's on the outside. So I think he's going to have a lot of success with that against Alex Perez. And we're going to also go ahead and break down some of the film reinforcing these topics and situations that I think are going to come to fruition in this fight. So our first situation here is going to be Matheus Nicolau showing his lateral movement and his footwork in a defensive way. And I think that he's going to be able to frustrate Alex Perez into overextending in a similar way as he did in this sequence in round 3 at 230 versus Dvorak. So Dvorak's marching him down here. Matheus Nicolau is using his lateral movement. And then as soon as David Dvorak goes for his right hand to close the distance and really get to Matheus Nicolau, he slides right out of the way and he takes the center of the octagon. This is a pattern that he does a lot. He always likes to make his opponent overextend and then circle back to be able to get that ring generalship and take the center of the octagon. So I think he's going to have a lot of success here with this specific sequence against Alex Perez, because Alex Perez does tend to, use linear boxing combinations, just go forward and, put his head down and not really try and pick his shots too well. So I could see him falling right into this from Matheus Nicolau. Our next sequence here is going to be Alex Perez using a fake shot to open up his boxing combinations in round 1 at 420 versus Formiga. I think he's going to go for this against Matheus Nicolau. He will sometimes feint the takedown and use his boxing combinations to try to close the distance to be able to get his hands locked around his opponents, or just try and tag him on the feet. In this sequence, he faked going for the legs and then came up high with a right hand, but he let off a combination here and none of it really landed clean, and Formiga was kind of able to get off the hook, just putting his hands up and circling off. I don't think that Alex Perez is even going to be able to close the distance to get close enough to land any shots on Matheus Nicolau. I think he's going to go for these types of combinations, but I think that Nicolau is going to slide right out of the way like he did in that previous clip. As I mentioned, Matheus Nicolau has a decent jab. He tends to go to the body with it as well as up high. He likes to mix it up a little bit, which I like, just keeping the shot selection randomized so that the opponent doesn't always know what's coming, so they can't set up counters with it. And Alex Perez, he doesn't have a horrible response to jabs. Like, he's not Gilbert Burns, who has a very specific weakness for jabs, but he is open to the shot. Everybody's open to it, but I just noticed in the Muhammad Mokaev fight, Mokaev was having some success with it. There's a sequence right here in round 2 at 128. As soon as Alex Perez broke the grip of Muhammad Mokaev and got back to the center, he was instantly getting jabbed in the face. And I could see that type of sequence happening in this fight. He tries to close the distance and get his hands around Matheus Nicolau. Matheus Nicolau is able to spin out, and then as soon as they get back on the feet, Nicolau is just going to start scoring with those jabs. And I think it's really going to have a good effect for him in this fight, just based off of getting points, getting volume, and putting the points on the board for Matheus Nicolau. So I think the jab is going to be there for Matheus Nicolau in this fight. I think it's going to help him keep his distance from Alex Perez, and I think he's going to have a lot of success with it here. And as for Nicolau's counters and his boxing as a whole, I think he does pretty good. I'm going to go over a sequence here against Matt Schnell, which I liked. Even though he did KO Matt Schnell in this fight, this is not the KO sequence, because it's really not a crazy feat to KO Matt Schnell, but I like the look of his boxing at least being crispy. So in round 1 at 225, he's using his lateral movement and he's frustrating Matt Schnell. He changes to southpaw and he lands a very good left hand, dropping Matt Schnell. Now, of course, he does have a fucking glass chin, but the shot setup was very good. Even though he doesn't have a crazy amount of power, he does set up his shots well. And then directly after that, like he always does, he took the center of the octagon and he landed another really good step through left hook. So his boxing is pretty clean for the most part. I think he's going to have success with it here against Alex Perez. I think he's going to be a lot cleaner, faster, slicker on the feet in this fight. And a statistic that I found that I really like here as well in favor of Matheus Nicolau was he has 93% takedown defense. Now, I know as a whole, stats can be deceiving because we look at a guy like Calvin Kattar who has really high takedown defense in terms of statistics and percentages, but when he goes to fight a high-pressure grappler like Aljamain Sterling, it's nowhere to be found. So we really have to start understanding that stats don't always tell the whole story. It really just depends on the stylistic matchup. But Alex Perez, he's not really chaining together a ton of takedowns. He's more, simplistic with it. He is more of like an American folk style wrestler. He's not like constantly going for trips and, shooting multiple shots at a time, chaining the takedowns together. So I don't think that he's going to have a lot of success here against Matheus Nicolau. And we saw in the Matheus Nicolau versus Tim Elliott fight, he does have really good defensive grappling. So I just do not see Alex Perez being able to get Matheus Nicolau down and controlling him. I could see him getting a takedown, but I think Matheus Nicolau is getting up. And we know that ground control is not as important as it used to be. It's more about damage and significant strikes landed. And Alex Perez really doesn't go for a ton of ground and pound when he gets top position anyway. And another thing going for Matheus Nicolau here, he was already scheduled for the date, was supposed to be fighting Manel Kape, who is a more dangerous opponent than Alex Perez, even though he might not have been training the grappling as much. I prefer the fact that he was already on the card. Perez stepping up on short notice. I'm sure he was already in shape from being in training camp for the Muhammad Mokaev fight, but nonetheless, I do like the fact that Matheus Nicolau was already scheduled for this card and Perez is stepping up on short notice. And you got to look at their career trajectory as a whole as well. I mean, Alex Perez, 3-fight losing streak. What is he really fighting for here? He already got his title shot and failed. And Matheus Nicolau, he had a really good win streak before the Brandon Royval fight. And, with a few more wins, he's right back in there in the title picture. So I think he's going to be motivated to get to the top of the division. Alex Perez, I mean, he's fighting for his UFC contract, but I still don't really think he gets cut here with a loss. And Matheus Nicolau, his only other loss other than Brandon Royval with a perfect knee was a head kick KO against Dustin Ortiz, who had just beaten Alexander Pantoja at the time. So not a horrible loss to have. He doesn't have durability issues. He's not really chinny. A head kick and a perfect knee and a right cross to the chin is pretty much going to put anybody out. So I'm not worried about the chin. I don't think Alex Perez is really going to be able to connect with the boxing anyway. And overall career trajectory, Matheus Nicolau is still on the come up, just had a hiccup in the road. And Alex Perez, he's just kind of maintaining on a downward trend. I don't really think he is going to be fighting for the same reason that Matheus Nicolau is here. So the way I see this fight playing out, I think that Matheus Nicolau is basically just going to move around, jab, leg kick, and then take the center of the octagon, throw some good combinations which land clean, and he's going to win 4 rounds that way. I think Alex Perez may grab the first or second round off of some takedowns, or maybe he gets lucky clipping Matheus Nicolau with one of his boxing combinations. But Matheus Nicolau, he only has 2 finishes in his UFC career, a submission in his debut and a KO against Matt Schnell. So he's not KOing anybody other than Glass Chin Matt Schnell, and he only has 1 finish other than that. And Alex Perez, no real finishing potential. The only people he's really finished have been just shit fighters, like fucking Formiga folding to leg kicks, and then he arm triangled. Some can as well. So I don't think this fight ends in a finish. So I definitely believe this fight is going to the scorecards. Like I said, neither of these guys have a ton of finishing potential. And I think that Matheus Nicolau's style is a lot better for winning a 5-round decision. Now, he hasn't gone 5 rounds before. Neither has Alex Perez, so that doesn't really worry me here. I think he's going to be a smart fighter in this fight. I was looking at one of his interviews, even though it was in Portuguese. He had a caption saying how he was talking about his fight IQ, staying safe, and making sure not to make mistakes. So I like that mentality from a fighter, staying safe and being able to win on the scorecards. I'm incredibly confident that Matheus Nicolau wins this fight by decision. Minus 185 on the money line, plus 220 Matheus Nicolau by decision. I think that's an absolute fucking whale right there. I'm definitely going to be placing a wager on both of those myself. I think it's a 100% guaranteed outcome. I've put a lot of research into this fight, and I'm very, very confident that Matheus Nicolau gets it done by decision. I'm basically 100% sure on that. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching the video. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed. And as always, have a great rest of your day.